Trent Cotney and John Kenney are dedicated to helping the construction industry with legal business and safety challenges. Welcome to this week's episode of Law and Mortar.
Hey, this is Trent Cotney. I'd like to welcome everybody to another episode of Law and Mortar. As always, I've got John Kenney with me. John, how are you doing?
Great. It's always great to be back to another one of our episodes.
Yes, sir. Here we are again. No shortage of news, especially with this administration. We've talked about immigration and tariffs the last few episodes, but want to switch gears a little bit. And on July 4th, the passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill happened. It's a lot to digest, John. I'll be honest with you. I've tried to. I've done a workmanlike job, but there's still a lot to navigate, almost 1,000 pages. One of the things that I kind of took away from it is, I think there are some tax advantages and benefits that contractors and our listeners should pay attention to. And I'll be honest with you, John, you're a lot smarter than I am, especially with numbers. I'm not a tax guy, but I know who to call, right? I got a CPA that I deal with. Some of the stuff that I saw in there that was kind of interesting that I think contractors should pay attention to is the pass-through deduction. If you've got an S corp, it looks like that's in existence and is going to increase next year, which is a good thing. The personal deduction for car loan interest is kind of interesting. It applies to not just cars, but like trucks. So it doesn't apply to fleet, but that's kind of interesting. It's got to be made in the U.S. That's something to think about. No tax on overtime. That's something that I think is beneficial. And there are a handful of other things. I think if you're a commercial contractor pitching developers or owners, you really need to navigate some of those incentive things and understand what your pitch deck needs to look like, because there are some major changes to Section 179, some potential phase outs, throughout 179 and 179D. There was also a rollback of a lot of the Inflation Reduction Act incentives that were there for solar and other things. So make sure your marketing team is paying attention to these changes. Again, I'm still digesting it. It's been, almost 21 days now, and I still haven't gotten through the whole thing. So what are you hearing on your end, John? I mean, what's your takeaways from sort of the business perspective?
Yeah, it's definitely big. There's no doubt about that. It's filled with a
Yeah.
lot. And
Right.
even still hearing that the Congress, especially the Senate part, are considering offering other amendments to kind of reverse some of the things they just did in this bill. So who knows? And you definitely hit it right. You got to consult a tax professional on this stuff because it's too complicated. But from a business standpoint, you brought up some really good points and I'm always one in this industry. We never really work for 3 or 6 months down the road. We're always 6 months a year. That's the way we think about it, right? Especially if you're in new construction, you're bidding things out over a year. So the overtime is an interesting one. Not even going to get into how the taxes work because that doesn't really matter at this point, but it phases out. That's a temporary incentive. So let's look at this. We get started, we get into next year, 26. We start bidding work out with budget numbers, and we're okay. We don't have to worry about the overtime, and it all works out the same. And then the job starts after the fact that the overtime runs out, which it probably will. I doubt they'll renew that. But even if they don't, so again, what do? Find out what's in these that is going to be a problem or a positive to your business and know when they kick in and kick out. We talked a little earlier about the solar incentives. I'm still not quite sure how that all works, but I do know the solar industry's kicking back big time against it as far as new projects. And I know roofing just in the last, it's been a while, but the last few years, solar's been pretty hot in the roofing industry, both for residential and commercial. So we'll have to see how that plays out as well.
Yeah, even though there were some of the Inflation Reduction Act incentives that were rolled back, there's still a lot of state incentives, local incentives, and other things out there for solar and other renewable energy projects. So it's not completely dead. You just have to kind of, understand the lay of the land. The other thing, I promise we won't talk about immigration again, given that we've killed it, but the amount of money they put towards, immigration and border control, you can anticipate that if you're having problems with ICE raids and I-9 audits now, there's going to be a significant amount more of that coming here in the future. So, get your ducks in a row. Make sure you got your standard operating procedures for dealing with ICE raids and I-9 audits. Know your rights. Make sure you let your employees know their rights, and just be safe, be careful. Um, John, I want to turn to insurance. Construction, regardless of whether it's roofing or other types of construction, and insurance go hand in hand, right? I mean, we all, you think of the major insurances that are needed. You got commercial general liability, you've got commercial auto, workers' comp, you may have umbrella, there may be other ones out there that you're using, EPLI or other things. But in my line of work, from a legal perspective, the two biggest claims that I consistently see, I'd say three biggest claims, are fire. So anytime there's a fire, because what happens with fire is it's not just the destruction that the fire causes, it's what happens when you dump, a million gallons of water on that fire when the fire department comes out. It's roof collapse. That's another big one. And then commercial auto. There's a lot of serious injuries and fatalities that occur as a result of driving a commercial vehicle, and then you get plaintiffs' attorneys that end up suing for that. So I'm curious, John. As you're navigating, you provide advice, to contractors coast to coast. Um, what are you recommending as far as best practices, when getting started, or when dealing with insurance renewals?
Yeah, so the three you brought up, I would say from what I know working with contractors and seeing the claims that are coming through from the actual insurance pays, auto lawsuits are probably the highest payouts of those three, followed right behind fire, okay, because of the damage done. The biggest problem that contractors don't usually think about is, okay, we have our taxes all covered, we're a pass-through, we're incorporated, we're all good, but there's something called piercing the corporate umbrella. And that happens a lot with lawsuits and insurance coverage. And I'm not getting into that from the legal standpoint because I'm not an attorney. That's what you do. But from a business standpoint, if that happens, your insurance basically pays out. There's a $20 million difference, which can happen, or 10 million or 5 million. Guess who pays it? That's coming right out of the company and the personal assets of the major stockholders. So, what do you want to do? Risk management plans. You got to put them in place. Specifically, you can't do enough training for auto training. Most of your bigger commercial carriers on the commercial insurance side require, your all commercial training where it's usually video training, safety training with your people, drivers. You got to have programs in place like, well, I'll tell you what we did, license checks, all kinds of things to protect yourself. And then on the fire is a tricky thing. Because if you're doing torch applied roofing, one thing you should make sure is all your people are CERTA. They have to be trained in CERTA and get the certification and follow the procedures for fire watch and everything else. Look, stuff's going to happen. There's nothing you can do about it. But when you have a good risk management plan and program in place and training, just like you should have for OSHA and safety, your chances of that umbrella being broke go down very substantially, and that's really where you want to be. Protect yourself the best you can.
Yeah, that's good advice. One of the things that you kind of alluded to there was that if you're dealing with an insurance claim or you've tendered something over to one of your carriers, pay close attention to anything that they send you. If they send you a document that has reservation of rights on there, that means that they may have some defense to coverage, based on your policy exclusions or what you've got in there, and they may ultimately decide to no longer cover you, in which case you may be liable. The other thing that you want to watch out for is if you get a notification that it's going to exceed the amount of their limits. So if you get that, that should be, holy cow, I need to lawyer up myself, if I haven't already, because they could be coming after me personally, as you kind of said, John, or after the company, right? So that's something that you really want to watch out for. Read all that language carefully. Read your policy carefully, because it's a huge line item next to labor. It's probably, when you say it's the biggest line item, insurance, it's
Yeah.
got to be.
But yeah,
Yeah,
because there's so many different areas of it that you're paying for.
yeah, yeah. It seems like, I mean, we're both business owners. It seems like some days the only thing I get up to do is pay taxes and insurance. So. Well, listen, John, I want to get to our questions now because this one, is actually it's a perfect segue. And this one is from Tom. Tom's question is, he's relatively new to the business. He does both roofing and siding, and his question is, if he has to identify a good insurance agent, should he be looking for? And I'm sort of extrapolating here, but the being able to pick a good insurance agent is like being able to pick a good accountant, consultant, lawyer, doctor, whatever it is, and you need to vet them. But what would you recommend if you're shopping agents? What would you recommend that a contractor, especially someone new to the industry, what should they be looking for?
Well, like I believe you said, Tom's specialty in siding and roofing. So you want to make sure that your agent understands the type of business you're doing. That's number one, because I don't want to say every, that's always a bad word to use. There's a good portion of agents out there that have just blanket coverage for just about anything you want. But if they don't understand your business, they can't help you. So you want to make them a partner. So you want to ask those questions and make sure they have people that understand, and the coverage that they're going to be able to get you are companies that specialize in your field. Why do I say that? Because all it takes is one claim, or they get frightened after you get your insurance, they change it, you get canceled in the middle. Those things happen. So really it comes down to vetting your insurance agents as well as you would vet a subcontractor that was going to work for you, or as well as you should be vetting the people you're working for to make sure that they can pay you. So it's a vetting process. And really, it's understanding your business, feeling comfortable with the people who are there, and if they have avenues to insurance that actually specializes in what you do, and it's not just a sideline that you're going to pay an extra 20% on top of what normally you would get out in the marketplace.
Yeah, that's spot on. I mean, the I would ask for references, make sure that they have, companies that they've worked with that are similar to yours. So for example, if you're doing roofing, that, they've got other customers that are roofing or roofing based. The other thing I would suggest is, get involved with associations because oftentimes there will be agents that are members, and that's a good indication that they at least know something about the industry because otherwise they wouldn't be a member. They're at least supporting the industry. So those are a couple of things, but really it comes down to, you want to find somebody that you can rely on. You need a good accountant, you need a good insurance agent, right? You got to have somebody that that you can go to that is not just going to sell you a bill of goods, but is going to give you that extra added advice, that value add. Regardless of whether it's CGL, commercial auto, cyber, workers' comp, whatever it is. So price is important. Price is obviously the biggest motivator, but having that trusted confidant is also important because you'll run into issues. It's like you said, John, it's only a matter of time. So,
Yeah.
well, listen, I want to thank everybody again for making another episode of Law and Mortar. Really appreciate everybody coming on and listen to us or watch us wherever you're at. If you have any questions for me, you can always reach me at trent.cotney at arlaw.com or anywhere social at Trent Cotney. John, how can they get you?
Social, same way at John Kenney or Jay Kenney, whatever your preference is to look up, it'll pop. And you can get me an email at any time at jkenny@cotneyconsulting.com.
Great. Thank you. And we'll talk to you guys soon.
Take care.